Jumping right into Silicon Valley real estate market data, this is the sale price to list price distribution for the last 22 weeks. The purple line here, the broad purple line, is the most current week, this past week. You can see it's one of the worst weeks on the graph, but keep in mind, these were all fantastic weeks. To get to be a bad week, you got to be down approaching the blue down here. Basically, 50% of the sellers right now are getting 10% above their asking price. Anytime that happens, you're in a good marketplace. Even in a bad marketplace, 50% of the sellers were getting something like 97.5% of their asking price. So you can see that we're doing pretty well compared to that. Each of the dotted lines are the oldest of the 22 weeks. There's actually just 6 of the dotted lines because I used the worst month and the best month also. And then there's 8 dashed lines and 8 solid lines. The basic trend was we started down here, the market improved going up along the red solid line, then turned around and peaked on March 26th of this year, and then has turned around and come down. Also notice the change in the slope. At the upper end here, the price ratio, the amount of overbidding was dropping more significantly. A week ago, you were up here at, call it, well, actually in the middle, sort of better. So here you were at 120%, and now you're at 118%. So you've dropped 2.5% in 1 week. You come down to the lower end and you've dropped almost nothing. And then you come down here and they're basically on top of last week. So what's that saying? It's saying that the buyers are feeling less pressure. So instead of bidding 120% over their asking price, they're only bidding 118% over the asking price. Obviously, it depends on the specific property, but in general, that's the global direction. This is the same data set, just 12 weeks instead, 4 weeks of dotted lines that we're now at the top. Basically the month of March, 4 dot lines that are dashed that are basically the month of April. And you can see that April and March were basically unchanged. But then May, especially the last 3 weeks in May, this week, last week, and 2 weeks ago have all been marching down fairly significant in the month of May. The market's slowing down. It's still a very strong marketplace, but it's, there's less overbidding going on, which tends to indicate less pressure. This is a quote that I just saw in the Mercury News on the 19th that basically saying we had low inventory and high demand that's causing the robust housing marketplace. Well, let's look at reality. Reality is we now have the normal number of inventory. The yellow line is when you have 100% of the metric. So the blue line is the available inventory. Just 2 weeks ago, you were down here at 80%, and now you're at 100%. So the shortage did exist. And if you go back another 2 weeks, it was down at something like 70%. But you've gained 30% of your expected inventory in the last 5 weeks. The other thing that's happened at the same time is the demand drop. If you go back something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, you were at 110% of the demand you'd expect. And now, coming forward to present day, you're only at 85%. So you've lost something like 25% of your demand at the same time you've had more inventory. Now, the reason you have more inventory is because the demand dropped, because the gray line is the number of new listings coming on the marketplace. And you can see it's been basically at 100%. You drop down for Easter. We're shooting up for this past week, but that's really not a statistical fluctuation. And what is happening is Memorial Day is close to the end of when it can be on the 30th of the May instead of as early as potentially like the 25th of May. 2 years data has 1 extra week. There's been a lot of holiday fluctuations. Tax day is April 18th this year, so it came later. People were basically going to be busy doing their taxes over the weekend of the 16th and 17th versus normally over a weekend that comes before the 15th. Then you had Mother's Day, which was on May 8th, is as early as it can be. Now you have Memorial Day, which essentially as late as it can be. So you've had a lot of timing fluctuation that's caused some of these spikes. And you can also see just from week to week, there's a fair amount of change in activity in the data points, which is one of the reasons I typically use 5 weeks worth of data. Now we're looking at days months sold inventory. This is the single biggest key indicator. The light blue line is gaining 5 days per week. And that's about the point at which I say something's happening, the market's changing. And we were there a couple weeks ago, then we had a plateau, and then we were there, not this this past week, but the week before, with it going up more than 5 days. But overall, we're not approaching that. And notice also the yellow line is coming up. So we did a big change from below the yellow line to equal to the yellow line, and now we're above the yellow line, and that may continue to step up. And if it does, we'll eventually get into a balanced marketplace. And at the beginning of a balanced marketplace, 40 to 50 to 60 days of unsold inventory, prices would still tend to go up, but much slower. Once you start getting to 70, 80, 90 days of unsold inventory, you're at the buyer's end of a balanced marketplace, and prices tend to stabilize and actually go down a little bit as you start getting into that buyer's marketplace. We're not there, and we've got a long way to go, but that's the general trend, it appears, at the current time. This now is looking at just the number of new listings that came on the marketplace. That's the blue line, and you can see that it's up dramatically, and this is raw count. So this isn't a fluctuation. This is just saying we had a lot more homes come on the marketplace this past week. It could be the timing that, we got an extra week, so let's throw the house on the market now before the holiday instead of after Memorial Day. Typically, the busiest 5 weeks are the 5 weeks before Memorial Day. So it doesn't surprise me. But then on the flip side is the number of new offers. You can see it peaked right about the beginning of April, end of March, depending on which peak you want to do. This is basically a combined peak in the way I read data, even though their individual data points are here. And it's been coming down ever since. That trend will probably continue. It's hard to see a normal year here, because last year we had the pent-up demand from COVID. The year before that, we had COVID. Then you get back into 19 and 18, which were fairly normal years, although 19 took off, was slow at the beginning of the year. 17 was somewhat normal, but a hot marketplace. 17 was unusual in the fact that you had 2 rounds of appreciation. So you almost have to get back here to 15 to have what I would consider to be a normal Silicon Valley real estate cycle. And it seems like we're mimicking that fairly closely, including the little dip here and then the big spike up. So it would be interesting to see what happens. But given a request to predict, I would probably say this is the level of new inventory I'd expect coming on the marketplace. So I'd expect it to start coming down. It will drop next week because of Memorial Day. After that, all bets are off. This is showing the 5 days per week increase where I raised flags. I did this just to show you, this was the end of the year holidays. This was the end of the year holidays. This was COVID and is probably the steepest line on here. End of the year holidays, end of the year holidays. Visually looks like it's close to as steep, but it's not. So this is where you break out the calculator and you were at 16.8 down here. And if you add 5 weeks at 5 days per week, then you'd be at 41.8. We're only at 34.7. So we're more than a week. We're 7 days short of where it would need to be a real red flag. So it's cautionary. It's not as cautionary as it normally would be, because this is a time of the year when DUI is normally increasing. But again, it's something to keep an eye on carefully because we're so close to the threshold. Now we're looking at days on the market. This is what a lot of people follow. I think it's too stable of an index. Look how little the median days on the market has gone up. An average has basically been flat until this last week, and it did a spike. I suspect if I looked at the raw data, there'd be a couple, 1, 2 transactions that I had a whole lot of days on the marketplace that got into escrow, and therefore the average got pulled way up. This is looking at the amount of overbidding. We have the orange line on there, which is the median, which is typically what I would follow in this data, except for this ratio, I normally follow the average. The logic being that the median would normally be around 100% with a fair number of properties above, a fair number below, and then a whole bunch right at 100%. So the median would be stable for a good part of the time, and your average would be continually moving. Here, I've just plotted both of them since I have the data. The blue up here is the average. You can see the average is higher. This is the average of what people overbid, where 50% of the buyers pay this percentage above, more than 11% above asking, and 50% or below 11% over the asking. And then the gray line is red on the right-hand axis, and you can see we're somewhere around 86% of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. A very strong overbidding marketplace that we're in. This is the Price distribution, we look at the cheapest 10% down here, and this is macro data, as has been most of the data, where you're looking at condos and townhouses, you're looking at Santa Clara County and San Mateo County. 10 percentile is down here somewhere around $850,000. Your median is somewhere around $1,650, $1,650,000. And then your more expensive properties are somewhere around $3.5 million. That's a quick cap. I'll see if anyone's got questions, and I'll go over the URLs at the end. I will point out that I had some technical issues with my handout that I posted, so I will be posting a new one with the letter B. So you'd put in the root URL, the letter H, 2022 for the year, 05 for the month, 21 for the day, and B to get to the corrected one. Without the B, you'll get the incorrect one. Not seeing any questions, I've moved on. Now what we're looking at is total active inventory. Total active inventory is then listings that do not have a contract. Different than most people. Most reporters will report properties that are on the market, but with an offer accepted, but it's contingent, so the listing agent wants backup offers. I don't count those. They just are not a member of the marketplace. The new buyer can't purchase it if they want unless the first buyer walks away. So that's like a TFT, and we don't count TFTs. So this is listings that have no underlying contract on them as far as a buyer. The yellow is the 5-year median, 15 through 19, and you can see we've caught up. So we have exactly the right number of listings for this time of the year, right around 2,000 properties for the 2 counties and the 2 types of properties. Now we're looking at the number of new listings. This is the drop down for Memorial Day, because I would argue that over the 5 years I'm using as the base, 15 through 19, Memorial Day would already be impacting the data. This year it's not, so it's up. I expect the blue data line to come down fairly dramatically next week, and will probably be under the yellow line. And then after that, it will probably come up and sort of follow it. It may be slightly above going forward. This is the number of new offers. This is pretty significant change. Basically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, we were right at the median of where you'd expect it to be. Then we dropped down and we've remained below. I think that trend may stay going on forward. So we've gone from above normal demand to below normal demand. But keep in mind, though, that what I'm using for normal were 5 great years. Don't expect prices to decrease just because we have less demand. I'm comparing 5 great years, and if you're performing at that level, you'd be having a great year. If you're performing a little bit below, which is where I think we'll end up, you could still have a good year without seeing any price declines. This is looking at days of unsold inventory of the 3 components. Again, this is the 5 days per week warning level, and you can see you're below that. And again, because this is the time of the year when it normally does increase when we're having a normal year, this does not alarm me. This is the heat map, days of unsold inventory in the different micro market areas. This is single family homes only. Clearly a lot paler pink than even last week or 2 weeks ago. And that's because DUI has been climbing. You have 2 areas now, Saratoga, Los Gatos, as well as the expensive areas in San Mateo County, that have no color associated with them. This is the frequency of overbidding, and you can see we peaked it over 90% of the sellers getting more than their asking price. Right now, we're probably about 86.5% of the sellers getting their asking price or more, or actually getting above. I don't count those getting at their asking price. This is the overbid frequency of the 3 counties. You can see they're very close together, the 3 types of properties in the 2 counties. You can see San Mateo County did dip down, but it recovered and it's back up. They're all right at 90 or just under 90% of the sellers getting more than their asking price. This is the frequency of overbidding. This requires sold price. So this is the bright red that we used to have in DUI. This will change, is my prediction, because we've already seen a slowing of the marketplace. So this will get paler as the frequency of overbidding decreases. The magnitude of overbidding will probably decrease even more. And that's here. Look at this drop. We went from 14% above asking price to about 11%. So you've lost 3%, and basically that's probably 2 weeks, because I think there's a data point right there. It's definitely coming down. It's not coming down like bad, but anytime you have 8% over, like we did all of last year, that was still a very strong marketplace. So this has just been superheated. This is the magnitude of overbidding in the different areas. You can see the trend in all 3 components is in the downward direction now. This is the overbidding on a graph. And again, this is an intense red only because it's going back in time. It's not as intense red as the frequency of overbidding because the magnitude has dropped down relative to the frequency. This is looking at the 3 different counties macro data for median price only. So this is condos and townhouses in Santa Clara County, somewhere just over 1 million. Single family homes in Santa Clara County, I think the number is it was 1950. I think it was down to 1925. And in San Mateo County, I don't know what the number is, but it's just shy. It looks like it's about 2.4 million. This is the sale price of the different areas. This is single family homes only. Redwood City up here is the median, so I define that to be white. If you're below the median, you're blue. If you're above the median, you're pink. So you can see Cupertino and Sunnyvale, as well as the San Mateo County Bay cities, are all fairly close to being white. So if you come over here and look at it, what are we looking at? Colors assigned by the median number, which is the middle. Redwood City was 2.5 million. Bay Cities was 2.6, only $100,000 more. And then 100,000 above that is Cupertino, Sunnyvale. So you can actually go from the median price in Cupertino, Sunnyvale is now $100,000 higher than it is in the Bay Cities. And I have seen that in my practice where I've taken people out of Santa Clara County into San Mateo County, and they're getting more house for their money. This is the appreciation over the 5 weeks. If it's highlighted in yellow, that's a record or tied for a record. So you can see an awful lot of the records have occurred in the last 4 weeks, which tends to indicate an increasing marketplace as far as price is concerned. I'm using the cumulative appreciation since the entire calendar year of 2020. So this is the median price for 2020, and then that's the price appreciation. So if you did the math, add a 1 in front of it and then multiply, and you'll find out what the current price is. Percentage of increase is more common in appreciation, takes less digits to do it. It's not very significant data points, but it gives you the information. And then the bottom part of the data is your condo townhouse marketplace. This is the individual micro market areas looking at the 3 major components: days of unsold inventory, the frequency of overbidding, and magnitude of overbidding. And then just because a lot of people want to know what the price is, the 10 percentile price, median price, and the 90 percentile price. Even South County now, the low end is $1 million. And as soon as East San Jose, Central San Jose, and South San Jose goes up a little bit more, it too will be at $1 million. And so the median single family home price in every one of the micro market areas will be over $1 million. This now is looking at the active inventory, comparing it to normal. You can see pretty quickly you're at 94% in Santa Clara County, 112% in San Mateo, 158% in Santa Clara County condos. And we've talked about the Bay Cities being an unreliable index because of the amount of new construction that's been going on since 2015. DUI is basically increasing in most of the areas. 34 days in Santa Clara, 33.5 in San Mateo, 32 in Santa Clara, 23 in the Bay Cities. And in some of my data, this comes out and looks like it's 34. There are some small areas that aren't reflective in this table, where the other table with the higher DUI includes the other areas that are outlying, like La Honda and stuff, that tend to be slower. Frequency of overbidding on 5 weeks, very constant, very steady, right at 88%. A little bit of fluctuation, not that dramatic. The magnitude of overbidding is noticeably on the downward trend here on the data. And then the appreciation, even though this is above 5% for 2 years, it's blue, indicating a cool marketplace because it's actually lost 5% of the value since last year. Now, I don't think that that's actual loss of property value. I think that's because of all those homes that have been built, all the townhouse and condos in the Bay Cities in San Mateo County since 2015 are less expensive because they're higher density, and that's bringing down the price point. This is just the number of offers. You can see that we're at 965. We're lower than we were last year. We're the 4th highest number. You can see we've cooled off. We're basically, if you look at this, since April, the 3rd busiest year out of the last, I think that's 8 years up there. The month of March, we were the 2nd. Month of February, we're the 2nd. January, we had a slow start because of the calendar event, with New Year's Day being Saturday and the start of my week. The first week included the holiday, where normally the first week of the year does not include the holiday. This is a 1 week worth of data. You have to be a little careful to read anything out of here. You can see a huge drop in the single family homes in Santa Clara County last week. It basically recovered with a 33% increase this week. That's the problem when you start looking at 1 week data. I did that just to do there, mostly because I'm bringing in the other counties. I'm bringing in Alameda County and Contra Costa County so that people can see what's going on. But it gives you a quick little summary. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on tables because tables are pretty boring. This isn't an apples and apples comparison because I'm looking at today, May 21st, and comparing it to June 5th. But some of the takeaways are inventory at 914. We may catch up and beat out these thousands. So we may have more inventory than a lot of the recent years. Also, the DUI is at 30. I wouldn't expect that to change dramatically. You can see that that's equal to a lot of these years now. So we're not faster than we would expect to be at this time of the year. You come down to number of closings and we're actually pretty low, 1,130. You're still stronger than a lot of these years, but closings happened 5 weeks ago. So the market hasn't slowed down yet on that. This is comparing apples and apples, but it's looking in the rearview mirror. So I'm not going to go over it. It's the same data as the previous slide. And this gets back to our URLs. So to go and watch an archive, you just type in tiny URL SVREMG for Silicon Valley real estate market graphs. If you want the handout, you put in handout, the year, month, date code, and a B for this week. It's not on this slide because I issued the normal one and had found some errors that I wanted to correct. So make sure you put in the B to get current, put in 2022 to get to this week. And I've been Richard Calhoun, Creekside Realty, 40 years working with consumers. Happy to work with anyone out there wanting to buy or sell houses or just understand what's going on in the marketplace. With that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions. Not seeing any questions. Take care. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye for now.